Hi everyone and welcome. This week I'm talking about confinement and separation and how we can train those and what are some common mistakes people make when they are trying to teach their dog to be comfortable confined away from them. This is especially helpful if you have a dog who doesn't do well in certain situations at home, like when you have visitors over and you'd like to have them safely contained somewhere, but maybe your dog struggles with being confined away from you. So we'll talk a little bit about that today and how to address those challenges. Okay, so training for confinement and separation. Who is this for? This is for you if you would like your dog to be comfortable confined away from you for at least short periods. And right now, your dog does tolerate confinement if you're right next to them, but you've been struggling to teach your dog to stay relaxed if you move away and they can't follow you. There are a lot of pieces to the confinement puzzle, figuring out what works best for your dog. This top point, confinement area size, type, and location, I've talked about in the past. So I'll just link to that blog or related blogs below where you're watching this video. What I am going to talk about today are the points following that, how far away you are from your dog's confinement area. Are you in or out of sight? How long are you away from them if you are away from them? What does your dog have to do in their confinement area to entertain themselves? And then what's going on in the environment around them? So where do you start training? Well, wherever your dog is totally relaxed. That means resting or working on a food toy, no barking, no pawing at a gate or crate door. But this will vary from dog to dog. So I'm going to talk through Pancake's example a little bit. That's one of my dogs, to give you an idea of how we approach this. I'm going to be focusing on a couple common mistakes I've seen clients make that have led to them struggling more than they needed to with this kind of training. The first is increasing the separation, both the distance and the time separated, too quickly in training sessions. And the second is once they have some degree of separation trained at home when it's quiet, it's very common for people to try to use that version of confined separation when they have visitors over or in some other challenging scenario. And that usually does not go well, and I'll talk about what to do instead. Okay, let's start with that distance parameter. How far away are you from your dog in their confinement area? Now, these are just examples. This is not a protocol I'm telling you to follow or anything. These are just examples I used with Pancake. It's a somewhat conservative plan. You could certainly be more conservative. So I started out sitting right next to his crate or his pen when I was teaching him to be comfortable in there and in his line of sight. I then did some work just a foot away, just scooted over a little bit away from his crate or pen. Once he was okay with that, just a couple feet away, then several feet away, eventually across the room in sight, then out of sight briefly, and then in another room out of sight. In the photo here on the right, that is him in his crate with me sitting. I'm sitting where the photo is being taken from at my desk. And that was a space of maybe 3 feet or so. And that was one of our practice setups. So here's some photos. These were just staged to show you how slowly I increased distance from Pancake when he was in his crate. In that first one in the upper left, I'm right next to the crate. My knee is touching the crate door. And then in the next photo over, I've scooted over, 18 inches or something. And I was sitting on the floor so he could still see me, but that was just a little different picture for him. I was still nearby, but separated by a little bit. In the bottom right photo, I am on the other end of the sofa. And then in the last photo, I'm on another sofa. So even farther away from him, but here you can see the door is not covered, so he can still see me. So how do you know when to go from one step to another and by how much to increase difficulty? Really, it's so individual that you're going to need to experiment a little bit when you're doing training with your dog, but do it very conservatively. For instance, if you think, oh, my dog can probably tolerate me sitting over here for a minute, maybe try it for 5 to 10 seconds first and see how that goes. You'll want to do multiple sessions successfully on a step with no signs of agitation, barking, or anything before trying to make it harder. And then when you move to a new step, your goal for that new step is for your dog to remain relaxed, so still no signs of agitation. Now, sometimes it will happen. You'll guess wrong. That's okay. Just back up, adjust, make it easier, and continue on with your training. Now, you can't really talk about separation distance without also talking about how long are you that far away from your dog. A good rule of thumb is however long you choose to stay away, come back before there is a problem, before there's any barking or pawing or other signs of agitation. For Pancake, these are just examples, not steps for you to try for your own dog. 30 minutes right next to the crate was totally fine. When I scooted over just a little bit on the sofa, I went with 5 minutes. He was fine at 5 minutes and probably would have been fine longer, but 5 minutes is what I tried first. When I first moved farther away than just a couple feet, I stuck with just 30 to 60 seconds at first to see how he would do. And the first time I walked out of sight, I literally walked out of sight and immediately back. So just a handful of seconds. Okay, so we just talked a bit about how far away you are and for how long. And I mentioned a bit about inside or out of sight. But remember, we still have other pieces of this training plan to talk about, including what does your dog have to do in their confinement area to entertain themselves and what is going on around them. So here's that graphic illustrating just in general, for example, what some early steps might look like. Across the top is someone sitting on a sofa with a crate, and you can see the person starts right next to the crate. In the second step, we've added a blanket over the crate, so the person is still right next to them, but now they're technically out of sight. And there are reasons you may want to do this early on to train this. And then you can see the increase in distance over the next couple steps is pretty small, a foot, a couple feet. And the time icons, the little purple clocks, are just a general indication of how long. So say you start out with a dog who is fine for a while with you sitting right next to their crate. When you make any adjustment, like drape the blanket over the crate, you're going to cut that time down a lot. And as you move farther away, you'll also keep the time relatively short. And maybe when you first move a significant distance away, and remember this is significant according to the dog, you might try a very short time interval. In all cases, I would give the dog something to do. I have a little Kong clip art here. And in all situations, this is a quiet day at home, nothing's going on. Now, common mistakes when doing this kind of training, I mentioned the increasing separation too fast. That's what we just talked about, and I hope some of these examples give you an idea of how slowly you might need to progress when increasing separation. The second is trying to use the most advanced version, or at least a pretty advanced version of what you've trained in a very difficult situation. So for instance, perhaps your dog is now happy in the crate in another room with you out of sight for several minutes. You think, awesome. Can I now use this when I have visitors over in this way with my dog in the other room? And the answer is probably not. So here, for example, is me with a friend over, and Pancake at this point could be in a crate out of sight from me for a while when there was nothing going on at home. But now there's a stranger in the house. I went all the way back with regard to all the other sort of parameters. I'm sitting right next to his crate. It's covered. I'm giving him lots of good things to do. And so here's just a graphic depiction of that again. Say on the left, you've got a dog who is fine for quite a while by themselves in a crate with something to do when it's quiet at home. But now over on the right, you're adding that danger. You're adding something tough like visitors. We're going to make everything else easier. Now that might mean the dog's person sitting right next to them, covering the crate, much shorter time, give them way more good stuff in the crate. So the take-home points I'd like you to walk away with as you go forth to work on this with your own dog is to increase separation distance and duration in tiny increments and always stop the step before your dog shows any signs of discomfort. And if you do decide to increase difficulty in the environment by trying out some of this training when you have visitors over or something similar, make everything else easier for your dog. All right, folks, I hope you found this helpful. If you don't have it already, grab our free PDF, Caring for Your Fearful Dog, at the link below, dogkindtraining.com/care. And I'll see you next week.